Hello again to the Cat and the Parrot. This session we thought we'd talk about safeguarding governors, or what the governors should be doing from safeguarding point of view, because obviously that's two different roles, isn't it? There is obviously the safeguarding governor that we should have, but then that shouldn't just be one person's responsibility. The whole governing body should have some responsibility of safeguarding, and I'm slightly worried about how that's separated sometimes. I have a really good governor. I've got to say that because he could watch this. I've got a really good governor, and he constantly asks me questions and constantly wants to know what to do to improve, but will also put me in a different position and say, well, why did you do that? Where does that mean? He loves a good acronym as well and asks me questions about all of the acronyms. But what do you think? So first of all, what do you think the whole board, the governors board, let's do the generic, what do the governors as a group have to do from a safeguarding point of view?
Okay, so interesting you're saying that to me, Kerry, because this week quite a lot of training to governing and trustee boards, and exactly the same question being asked. In ordinary times, but also on top of what does it mean now in January 2021? So again, we know that the last year with COVID, a week after you were closed, we got the guidance, didn't we, about amending the Keeping Children Safe.
Yeah.
And I've looked at the current 2021 amendments, and they're very similar to last year. They're very, very similar. I'm sure you noticed as well.
Not much change.
As far as, nothing's really changed as far as DSL availability.
Yeah.
We've gone back to our original on-site, off-site, online, offline. Yeah. So availability means all those four corners.
Yeah.
Ensuring for some schools who have not got the child protection software, being full that you're still using paper and pen, and therefore you will need some site who can go into files to get past information or current details about families. Okay, so that's one thing to consider, definitely about the availability. So therefore, question is, the safeguarding governor would need to know what is currently happening in the operational side of safeguarding. So how's it operating currently in January 2021?
Yeah.
As in training in set, that would maybe happen the first week of September. We've got different guidance on the 5th to the 12th.
Right.
So what does that look like in relation to more key and essential workers being told only send them in if you have to?
Yeah.
Even though schools are still saying they're having lots of children compared to the first time round.
Yeah.
So it would be, how are you ensuring that safeguarding is operational from the procedures, from the policy, from the reporting, even more online learning now? We know that this time round schools are doing much more live time rather than pre-recordings. A lot of them are doing kind of Google, whether it's apps or classrooms or Zoom rooms. To make it as ordinary as possible, with lots of discussion and children talking. So therefore, how are you doing that in a way where you are safeguarding children too? As in, for example, have you got another member of staff in there to be that support person if the child wants to talk offline? You know what I mean? So like you'd have a TA to deal with behavioural worry. Have you got a similar setup in the classroom? It's just looking at, have you got the same setup that you would have in school? So and if not, what have you done to make those amendments?
Do you think that's just the safeguarding governor's role, or do you think that's the whole governing body's role?
It's interesting, it came up this morning again and yesterday in the evening session I did. And what I'm suggesting in that is, safeguarding is one word but a massive subject. Yeah, lots of the prevent duty to teaching safeguarding to sexual exploitation, criminal exploitation, the signs and symptoms, referring, training, raising the awareness, lots. So I encourage the safeguarding governor to have some schools have now got a safeguarding committee as part of the governing body, where they're looking at safeguarding, about 2 or 3 of them, but it's led by the safeguarding governor, to ensure that they themselves know what they're doing in that deep diving. So it's ensuring that it's happening on the ground. The safeguarding governor being that listening ear and supporting the DSL, maybe touching base every fortnight or once a month for every half term. But at these times, we're getting new directions every week, as you can see currently. So my question there would be, the role would be for the governing body to recognise that what are we doing about safeguarding, and then the safeguarding governor kind of sharing their their kind of experiences of what it currently looks like in their involvement.
Yeah. So my governor has, I think it's about a 14-page tick list that he goes through every year, which has questions that he asks me, and then he'll scribble on it and tick it and say no or yes or why, and ask me questions. Is that standard? Do all governors have that? Or is that just
so? It's interesting. You're very lucky. You're very fortunate in that situation. So I've got lots of new safeguarding governors. So I've done quite a few recently, and quite a lot of them are quite new to the role, as in taking on the role quite new in the last year or so. Okay, and don't forget the last year has just meant the same as COVID. Yeah. So haven't been on the ground as far as gone in and looked in between cracks and crannies to think, oh, what's going on? So they're still reliant on being told what they're doing rather than seeing it live.
Yeah.
And a lot of them feel uncomfortable with actually positioning themselves where they're actually on site because of COVID, but also don't want to be seen as interfering on top of what schools are doing.
Right.
Do you understand?
Right. Yeah.
So there's a thin line between where do I stand in this? So at the moment, it's very fragile as far as what does it look like. But the question would be, how do you know? So I know the schools that were kind of spoken to in the autumn term about how did you safeguard children in the first lockdown? We have to learn from that and what we're doing now. So the question would be, you need to know how things have been changed, hence the amendments have been made to continuously safeguard children. So the safeguarding governor needs to know that. They need to know about the policy changes, the training, how are you getting referrals, how are you ensuring the well-being of staff. So it's quite a lot to take on. And I think the safeguarding governor would need help on that at the moment, maybe from the chair of governors or another few colleagues there, but there's quite a lot to take on for one person who's a volunteer and who may not be a safeguarding person in their day job. So it's quite a lot to take on. So I think going back to your tick list, some safeguarding governors have been on training and some haven't. Some have just gone on governor training and some have gone on safeguarding governor training. So if you're part of a multi-academy trust, and what I'm recommending at the moment is recommending for those colleagues, but also colleagues in local authority, like you've got DSL forums, there's also governing forums as well, or kind of networks where you can talk to other colleagues like yourself around the job you're doing. Does that make sense? So whether you're local authority or independent school, there's networks around the country that you can join and get kind of support in that role. But I do think you will need a platform, like what you said, of some sort of quality assurance of what you're checking against. It could be keeping children safe. So when you look at part 2, management of safeguarding, they've got paragraphs that should be happening.
Yes.
Whether it's a looked after teacher for designated children, whether it's teaching safeguarding, all of those things. So I think that's the first. If you haven't had training, I definitely encourage you to read part 2 and also Annex B, the role of the safeguarding lead.
Yes.
And then start between the two. If you're going to challenge the DSL, ask some questions about their role and what it looks like in practice. Likewise, the management of safeguarding, start with that again, and what does it look like in practice, also during lockdown, as in the online and offline.
Right. Do you think that there's a standardized, I mean, the safeguarding governor is going to be asked, if you're inspected, questions, but is there a job description for them?
It's interesting you say that, because I've done quite a lot of audits in the last year, and what always comes, I always speak to the safeguarding governor in them. That's my point. And a lot of them are like yours, being very supportive in speaking, but they don't know if it's fit for purpose, meaning training wise. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what skills, so, where does it tell them what they should be doing? And part 2 would be the bit I definitely would encourage people to go and have a look at, as in the management of safeguarding, because that would be, they talk very boldly about how do you know that the policies are effective?
Yeah.
Are you compliant at all times?
Yeah.
So there shouldn't be, your DSL shouldn't be telling your safeguarding governor, oh, I only work 4 days a week. So who on the 5th day is the safeguarding lead?
Yeah.
So things like that, I think it's really important they understand the full kind of responsibility of being a safeguarding lead, and then using those 2 sections I've mentioned to ensure that they know it is happening.
Excellent. Okay, so we're coming to the end of our 10 minutes. So the moral of this, therefore, is experience, reading, Communication, really, isn't it? Training.
And training, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you haven't yet had the training, then definitely use the guidance to kind of support you in your challenge. But you definitely need to think about going on, whether it's a local authority training or training for a different body, but you need to go on some training to equip you in understanding how you need to challenge your Excellent. Kind of, you know, your school.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.